Hello and welcome back to Walk the Cinema podcast, where we walk the cinema so we can talk the cinema. Today's episode, we are going to be discussing Stalker. So Stalker is a movie that is a Tarkovsky movie, right?
Yeah.
He's Russian.
Well, yeah. Soviet.
Yeah. I guess
this was his last Soviet movie before he, kicked himself out. He wasn't kicked out. He didn't want to work under the regime anymore. They, kind of stuffled his movies so they couldn't get wide releases. And this movie, if you're, into completing top lists or, movies you gotta watch before you die, you know this one, even if you haven't seen it.
Yeah. I think that the poster's pretty iconic, where
There's so many different posters, though.
Well, the one that I think of when I see this is the one where it's the guy's shaved head.
Yeah,
he's, looking...
that's the letterbox one.
Yeah, that's the one that I think of.
But if you go on IMDb, it's a different poster. If you go on Wikipedia, it's a different poster. If you get the DVD, it's a different cover. There's so much art. I find it a little hard to identify by the poster.
I don't know. I just feel like that's...
Yeah, that's the one I would think of first, yeah.
But anyway, so the basic plot line of it is somewhere in the distant future.
Is it in the future?
Yeah, I think it's in the future.
I'm not sure if it's in the future. It's just dystopian. It doesn't really matter when it is.
I don't know. I think it's in the future, and I think it's something apocalyptic has happened.
Yeah, the scenery of it would remind you of Chernobyl. Even though Chernobyl hadn't happened.
Right.
But it looks like, if you've seen the lost Chernobyl cities where it's all abandoned and destroyed, kind of looks like that. Inside of the zone.
Mm-hmm. And basically what happened with that is, a meteorite, or not.
An alien.
They kind of leave that up in the air. Something has kind of created this zone where there's... people aren't really supposed to go into because they kind of perish for the most part.
Yeah, they're scared of it. They don't know what could happen. But some people are also very interested in it because they heard of the room, yeah, where some people think you can ask for something, but you kind of find out you don't ask for it.
It kind of gives you what your heart desires the most.
Yeah, which sometimes it's not what you think you want. And that's why a lot of people end up not leaving the zone or the room itself because they don't like who they really are, I guess. I don't know. The movie's pretty ambiguous, but I would say it's about human beings and what drives them. And also wanting something they can't have is a pretty big theme in this. They all want something they just can't have outside the zone. The stalker wants to be important. I think that's his main motivation for being a stalker. The guide.
Through the zone.
Yeah. I think his motivation is wanting to feel like he has something to contribute, which he cannot have outside of the zone.
Right.
Some people don't think it's deep. I feel like it's pretty deep.
I think I'd say it's at least thought-provoking, and I feel like the movie itself is very captivating. It is long. It's 2 hours and 46 minutes, I think.
Yeah, I think that's it.
And, honestly, I think that it fills the time well.
It did not feel almost 3 hours.
Right.
I think after they leave the zone, it slowed down significantly.
I agree.
But that's, 15 minutes?
Something like that.
I don't know, but it did not feel 3 hours.
It's definitely very... interesting. And we watched it where the life outside of the zone is like a sepia filter.
It's not black and white. Well, it was filmed in black and white. And some releases of this, you might have seen it in black and white. We have the Criterion release. It is like a brownish, goldish tone, which I think works really well. Actually,
yeah, I think it gives that kind of gritty feeling of despair.
It
feels very despairing.
It's not trying to be black and white because it's old or trying to look older. It's the black and white that has the sepia tones to it because it's like just despair. There's no hope there. Mm-hmm. Everything there is just run down. Everyone just kind of living, but just surviving, not doing anything significant.
Right. I will say that for like an apocalyptic type society that they're living in, it seems very what's the word? Built up still. Because it seems like they kind of allude to something major happening when they were children. When the three characters were children around that time. But, I mean, they still have, like, really big infrastructure, I guess, like, within it. Because, like, the guy's still a professor. One of them's still a professor. One of them's still a writer that has written books. So it's not like an apocalyptic event where humanity's kind of lost, right?
It's just changed.
Yeah. So that feels to me a little, like, odd, I guess.
It's dystopian, but familiar.
Right. And so, I don't know. I think that the world building within this, while it's kind of not, it's not talked about in specific, you know what I mean?
It all goes in, like, one go. Mm-hmm. Like, I know this is based on the book, and the book goes through, like, years, and this doesn't. Mm-hmm. We don't actually know how long it is. It could be a day or a week or, you know. I guess it's a day. They don't really sleep.
They take a nap, you know, in the woods.
Yeah, we all take naps.
But, I mean, I don't know. It does feel familiar but distant. And I think that's probably, you know, the idea behind it. But I really enjoyed the Stalker character.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's a really good character.
He really is.
Because I feel like he's got this I feel like he does want to help people. Like, he genuinely wants to help people. Because that makes him feel good. Whether that's, whether people think that's selfish or not, you know, could go either way. But that's why I think that at the end he's still so sad, because he's kind of, he realizes at the entrance of the room with the professor and the writer that he's not really helping people. He's kind of bringing them to their destruction by bringing them to this room, because there's no way to say what your deepest desire is.
Yeah, it could destroy you. It could humiliate you. It could make you feel like you're a terrible person. So yeah, they don't go in the room. Mm-hmm. So we don't actually see what happens.
Right.
But we're told the story of, you know, his teacher, Porcupine. And, you know, we kind of can imagine what happens. He went in there thinking he was going to ask to have his brother back.
Who died on that journey there.
Yeah. But he didn't get to ask anything. The room just gave him all the money that he could ever want. Because
that was his actual deepest desire, beyond any familial ties.
Mm-hmm. And that's what destroyed him.
Yeah.
Because he realized that he was sucky. He was doing this for profit and not for helping anyone. Not for even saving his own brother.
Yeah, which is like, you know, your deepest desire. I mean, you don't know what it is. You don't know what subconsciously
I guess not.
Because the professor, you know, thinks that this room could be used for evil. Because he thinks that, like, bad people can use it to take over the world, or, like, you know, change it in some type of way for their own personal gain. But
he wants to destroy it.
He wants to destroy it because he's afraid of that. But he, you know, does realize that, you know, it can't be harnessed, because there's no way to control your desires. You can control your wants and your wishes, but you can't control the desire.
This is such a good story.
It really is. But it's an entertaining story.
It is, and that's why it doesn't feel as long. But also, he made it visually super
compelling.
Yeah, compelling is a great word. You're never not liking what you're seeing. Like, it's because there's a lot of slow shots that last for like 2-3 minutes just of someone's head, right? Mm-hmm. And those are compelling, but then there's also like beautiful panning shots, and there's fourth wall breaking moments. Mm-hmm. There's just a lot. There's nature shots. There's just everything he did. He really nailed. The composition of a lot of the shots is also like great.
Yeah, and I think that like the story itself is so interesting. Like you never really know what's going to happen next. I always felt like this kid, it's so well done that I felt like it could turn into like a horror movie, like at any second. Like something's going to happen to any of these characters, like something's going to go wrong because just the nature of it, because it talks about how the zone is like a puzzle full of death traps. So it kind of sets in your mind to always be on edge while you're watching it.
It's super tense.
Yeah, it's tense, and like there's no...
And you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You don't know what the end is. Like, at all. Like, a lot of movies you can guess. Even if they're good movies. Like, we've talked about 12 Angry Men. And that's a great movie. It's a classic. Everyone loves it. You know what's going to happen. It's fairly obvious. But this, you have no idea what's going to happen at any point. There's no way of figuring out what could happen. Unless you read the book, I guess. Which, from what I've read, is loosely... Yeah, like the movie is loosely based on it. Like it uses the Stalker. The book doesn't even have the room. It's a different object, but with the same meaning. It's a golden sphere.
Yeah, and I think that it was saying that the professor and the writer weren't really in the story.
They're not two singular characters.
Yeah, they were kind of like, vessel for the meaning of the story, which, a lot of movies do that where, there's like an entity that can't really be explained in the book, so you kind of have to make it a character or characters.
Movies always done that. Like, the Dracula movies are all different. Mm-hmm. Like, they mix and match characters for every reboot, remake, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So it's pretty normal. And here it works really well.
Yeah.
Because you get 3 characters basically for the whole movie. Mm-hmm. And it's really compelling and entertaining. And they're so different. They're always bickering. But then you do get those 2-minute shots of someone's head or them walking that's completely silent just with the score. Mm-hmm. And that works great too. The transition between them arguing to just you hearing the birds outside of the room or the rain with the fish eating. I don't even know what they're eating. The bomb.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of like symbolic elements that I can only guess at what their meanings are, like the dog that lives in the zone that they save that like follows them through the zone to a certain point and then follows them out, which I don't know, to me it kind of felt very much like a spirit guide, like how in like other cultures they have like a dog figure. Mm-hmm. I can think of like the Mexican dog. I can't remember the name of it, but the one that is supposed to like be able to travel in and out of the spirit world, and it can bring you to whatever. That kind of reminded me of that, but that representation doesn't really make sense for this movie, I don't think.
It could also be like he could represent everything that's good with humanity because he's pure. Could be a lot of things. I don't know. There's probably a lot of interpretations. I know some people don't believe in interpreting this. The same way that our last episode was the Holy Mountain.
Yeah.
And some people there's no interpreting it. It's just random stuff. But I feel like this one's less random.
I feel like this is less random too.
Not that I think Holy Mountain is random, but Holy Mountain, there's no figuring that one out. You figure out little bits here and there every time you go through it, but same with this. But I think this is probably like easier to write your own narrative about it and feel pretty like secure that you got it right, even if it's different from everybody else's.
I definitely feel like this movie is something that I was a little bit surprised that I liked it so much. Because, I don't know, it does have that kind of, I don't want to say nostalgic feeling, because it's not that. It's more of like a longing feeling.
It kind of felt like a long nightmare. Like those nightmares where you feel powerless.
Yeah.
And you keep trying to do something, but you never achieve it.
That's a good way to describe it. Like, it does kind of feel like you're a passerby in this desolate scenario happening.
Yeah, because there was a lot of moments where I was just staring for like minutes at a time without like even like sitting upright or shifting or anything. I was just not moving, staring at it. And it kind of, I don't know, it kind of feels like you're going with them. Because, again, you don't know what's going to happen, so you're like on your toes waiting for
something to happen.
Yeah, the next thing. Which is never really a thing, I guess. There's not really like a moment. It's just always happening, always tense. Like, sure, they go through stages, I guess. It's kind of formed like the Green Knight, for like a more modern example. Where you're going through stages, but you're still just completing the path. And then the end, you find out that like you probably had a wrong idea of it.
Yeah. And then, I mean, the only other thing that I can think that's, I think, kind of important to talk about is his daughter, where they kind of mention that he's cursed because he had her, that she's a product of the zone, and all that.
That's the most confusing part.
It is kind of confusing because, you know, at first you're kind of like, I think the interpretation is, before you kind of understand what the zone is, that the zone, because he's doing illegal things, that's why she's crippled.
Yeah.
Or that's why she's, you know, sick or whatever. And then, you know, as you learn that the zone is more like magical, I guess.
It's very sci-fi-ish.
Yeah.
It's like a sci-fi thriller, really. I mean, there's no spaceships or anything, but nothing that's happening has any natural order to it.
Yeah. But she's like, you kind of, I don't know. There's a lot of interpretations. Like, is this like a radiation type thing where she's,
I think,
you know, since he goes in there so much, he's kind of tainted.
I think it's kind of alluding to it. I don't know if Tarkovsky meant for that to be like the explanation, but he definitely meant to allude to it. Because there was nuclear disasters before Chernobyl. Yeah. He based some parts of it in some other nuclear disasters, so I think it does allude to the radiation. And there's like power plants that we see inside of the city. Yeah, like in the distance. They would allude to nuclear power.
Because then at the end, like the very end shot is the little girl having powers that can...
telekinesis?
Yeah, that can move objects without touching them. So I think that it does kind of allude to some type of radiation, or, you know.
It does. It does, but I don't know if that's the explanation or if she's a special. The girl is the only one that sees in color. I guess she's not seeing in color, but we see her in color outside of the zone when she's the main focus of the scene. When, like, he's scaring her on his shoulders back home, or when she is moving the objects. Those scenes are the only scenes outside of the zone in color, because she's the main focus. So does that mean that she's special, or that she hasn't been tainted yet by the hopelessness of it all?
Yeah, I can definitely see that those are probably the two most likely options, is that she either hasn't gone through this kind of desperation that the other characters have gone through. Yeah. Like, they're all sad or hopeless in some way.
They all feel kind of meaningless. Yeah. And that's when they're in the zone, they feel like they're going to change something. And I think that's why there's a transition to color. Right. It's not the hope. I guess it is the hope, but it's them feeling important.
But I think also it could mean that she's just a byproduct of the zone, because like,
yeah, it could also be that.
The only time that it's in color is in the zone, and then outside of it, she's the only thing that...
Because she might have parts of the zone with her.
Yeah.
Like the radiation.
Or whatever it's, alluding
yeah,
to.
it doesn't really matter what it is. It alludes that she's different from anyone else.
Yeah. And then there's, there's not many characters outside of the three main men. There's his wife, who has a dialogue that's directed towards the audience.
Yeah. It's like a
explanation as to why everything's going on.
Yeah, and like she thinks about her relationship and how she's here now.
It's just an interesting movie, I'd say.
It's great. I obviously recommend it. I gave it a 10 out of 10.
I gave it a 9 out of 10 because, it's just not... It doesn't hit me where my heart is. It just kind of, makes me... It makes me feel like this is something that's worth watching and is good.
Yeah. Tarkovsky is like held as a genius, so any of his works will be good to watch, and this is a staple. We would cover this at some point eventually. Just happened to be now.
But yeah. Anyway, I think that's all for this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, comment if you can, and we will see you next time.